Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here to do a plant video. So if you follow me on Instagram, you know that I love my plant babies. I at this point have, I counted the other day and I think I have like 52 or 53 plants throughout the house. I mean, if we're not talking about like the plants that I'm propagating, that's how many I have. If I am talking about the plants I'm propagating, like that are still nesting, so to speak, I probably have more like 60. Yeah, I have quite a few plants in my life and I love them all. I actually just spent like 2 hours, which sounds insane to some people, taking care of them yesterday. But for me, it was like super cathartic and I just really enjoy them and they make me happy. I'm a little bit plant obsessed. So because of that, people seem to think that I know a lot about plants, which I'm not stupid when it comes to plants. I've been gardening for a long time. I've had houseplants for a long time in the past before I started having kids. And then I picked up having tons of plants after my kids were all done with their like knocking over and ripping stems and leaves and stuff off and eating dirt phases. And since our dog is now not a puppy anymore, so I am well versed in the plant life, but I would not call myself a botanist or a horticulturist, is that a word? Or like a plant expert. I have still killed my fair share of plants. I still am finding out what works for my house and what doesn't, and I don't know every single like Latin term for every single plant. With that being said, take this video as just my personal experience and what works for me. Just don't take it too seriously. These are just my tips and tricks on what the title says, which is, you know, acclimating a new plant baby to your home, pest control, and all of that. Biggest question I get, or the most asked question I get, is how do you take care of a new plant baby? How do you know, bring a new plant baby into your home? How do you control pests? Like, that subject seems to be the main concern of most of you guys who follow me on Instagram. So I thought I would tackle that subject in a video since I just brought home a new plant baby of my own. This is a golden pothos or pothos, whatever you want to call it. I have 2 of them. I love them so much. This one I picked up at my local greenhouse this morning. I went there to get some potting soil because I repotted one of my monsteras, and I saw it and had to have it and came home with it, even though I already owned this one. This one I actually got from Turner's greenhouse, but I got her a couple weeks ago, so she's pretty much well acclimated to my house. I like to say about a month to month and a half is usually when you can tell if a plant is happy or not in their space. But yeah, I brought home this new plant baby, so I thought what a perfect time to show you guys and talk to you guys about what I do before I introduce the new plants to the rest of my house and to the rest of my plants. So when you pick out a plant, first off, when you go to a greenhouse, there are a few things that you want to make sure to look for in a new plant. First off, you want to make sure that your house can handle the type of plant you're picking out. I think a lot of people have bad experiences killing plants because they think that they have the right setting for a plant and then they don't, and either it's not getting enough sunlight or it's too cold or it's too hot, or you know, there's some issue with its environment that you bring it into and it dies, you know, and then you think, oh, I kill all plants, I'm a plant murderer, I can never have a plant. So just be very aware of like what plant you're looking for when you go to a greenhouse. I know how easy it is to see like a beautiful exotic plant and think, oh my god, I need that, I want that, it matches the color of my kitchen, or it reminds me of my friend that I haven't seen since 3rd grade, or I don't know. I know that's a very easy thing to fall into, but you need to make sure, again, like you need to really have a come to Jesus moment. Think, can I actually like take care of this plant? Will this plant actually work in my house or where I want it? My suggestion is if you see a plant, look at its tag. Usually it will have a name on it. If it doesn't, ask somebody who works at the greenhouse. Google it on your phone, because everybody's got a phone and access to the internet, and just see what the light requirements are and see what like the heat and humidity requirements are before you take it home. That's the first step. The next step is to make sure you find a healthy plant. And by healthy plant, what you're looking for is new growth, so little baby leaves growing out. You want to look for a plant that doesn't have a whole ton of like damaged or gross leaves. This one has like one right here, which I'm just gonna pinch off because it's unattractive, but this one just has one. This one was fairly healthy. It was bushy, it had really bright colors. You also want to look very closely at your plant. You want to make sure you're not bringing home a plant with pests. Pests are a bitch to get rid of, okay? They are so horrible, and with my past experience, I've only been able to rescue a handful of my plants. If I have a spider mite infestation, I usually just chuck that plant. I know a lot of people are gonna be like, oh my god, that's so wasteful, but spider mites are the devil, and they're really hard to get rid of. And I've actually talked to a few greenhouse owners who say that like once you have them, it's pretty impossible to get rid of them. You can control them, but to get rid of them completely is like really hard. You want to check to make sure there's no like little itty crawly things on there, no mealy worms. Mealy worms are another thing that's hard to get rid of. I really tried hard to save a fiddle leaf, my first ever fiddle leaf. It came home with mealy bugs, and I tried so hard to get rid of them and couldn't, and I didn't want them infesting the rest of my house, so I got rid of that fiddle leaf. Since then, as you can see, I have a successful fiddle leaf growing over there and one propagating and another one propagating upstairs. So I have found healthy fiddle leaves, but that one came home with mealy bugs, and I thought, okay, I can handle this, and I couldn't. You also want to kind of look at your greenhouse that you're shopping at. Really dirty greenhouses are usually going to be prone to having a lot of pests. And when I say that, I mean like you can tell a nice greenhouse from a bad greenhouse. And I feel like in my experience with, and I have traveled for greenhouses, I feel like with my experience, the nicer, cleaner ones are the ones that have the less likelihood of having pests. So you just want to also, you know, pay attention to your surroundings and see kind of what is going on in that greenhouse as well. But yeah, definitely take your time, really look. And I know a lot of people are like, how do you spot pests? Spider mites are especially hard because they're so small. What I suggest doing is concentrating on like one spot somewhere deep down and below, and just stare at it in good lighting and you're gonna look like an idiot. I always do. You're gonna want to stare at just one spot or general area very, very hard for at least a full minute. And if you see any little speck moving, there you go. There's your hint. If you're just constantly moving around searching, you're not going to catch a spider mite. You want to just concentrate in. Another telltale sign of spider mites is spider webbing. If you see a lot of like webbing intertwined into your plant, that's a good sign that there's spider mites as well. Granted, there are regular spiders, especially in greenhouses, that are going to be on your plant, but you can tell what's in like an infestation and what's not. So after you pick out your perfect plant that has the perfect coloring and it looks really healthy and doesn't have a lot of pests that are visible to you on them, once you pick that out and you feel like you can actually take care of this plant, but also know that if it dies, it's just not the end of the world, you go buy your plant and you bring it home. One of the things that I suggest before you even bring your plant into the house is to spray down your plant very, very well with a forceful but not damaging spray of water. So I like to just, right before I walk in with my plant to my house, I like to stop at my hose. I turn my hose setting, I believe it's on like clean setting, so it's a nice jet spray, but it's like thin, like multiple thin jet sprays, and I like to just give my plant a really good spray down. Now I try to avoid soaking the soil because the soil is probably going to be already damp and I don't want to overwater the plant because nurseries tend to mist their plants or water them pretty much daily or every other day, and they keep it really humid in their greenhouses so they don't dry out super fast. So you don't want to overwater your plant from the get-go, so don't concentrate on the soil as much as concentrating on just like the leaves. You want to get the undersides and the top sides really, really well, and what this will do is not only just like knock off just dust and cakiness from being in the greenhouse, but will also knock off any possible spider mites or mealybugs or whatever type of bugs before you bring it into your home, the ones that you maybe didn't see. This is really important in just, you know, controlling pests and preventing them, is just making sure to bring a clean, healthy plant into your house. So giving it just a really good hose down will help with that. Now there are a few plants where they're really, really fragile leaves, or you know, can fall off really easily. For those, I would suggest soaking their leaves. You can look online for different types of, you know, ratio recipes and stuff, but you can do like a Dawn and water and something mixture where you can just dunk the whole entire plant or just the leaves to kind of rinse off anything bad with, so that way you don't damage it with the spray. But for the most part, hardy plants like these pothoses or pothoses or philodendrons, things like that, can handle a good spray down. And then the second thing you want to do, and this is just something that I do, if you want to control pests preventatively, if you want to control gnats, this is another big question I always get, is how do you prevent gnats in your home? Now, a lot of people, if you go to websites, say just don't overwater your plants. Make sure that your soil dries out in between waterings. Blah, 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 blah. A lot of places say that. I love my plants. I've kept them all alive for a very long time now. I think I'm getting the hang of watering, but there's still no way to prevent gnats in my home without doing some type of insecticide preventative measures. For me, I'm not a naturalist when it comes to my plants. Hell, I'm not a naturalist when it comes to my kids. When it comes to medicine, I give them, you know, they are vaccinated, things like that. So I kind of vaccinate my plants, if that makes sense. So I do like to use an insecticidal preventative, and my favorite for gnats, spider mites, mealybugs is this systemic houseplant insect control by Bonide. This stuff is amazing. It's in granules. All you do is you can either take a spoon, which I have a spoon in all of mine. I have one down here to treat my plants down here, and then I keep one upstairs in my garage. But basically you just sprinkle this stuff on the top of the soil of your plant. You make sure to mix it in and make sure to wear gloves. I always have my gardening gloves nearby because you don't want to touch insecticides with your hands. You don't want it leaching into your skin. But you put that on the topsoil and then you just mix it in an inch or two down into the soil. And what that does is every single time you water or it gets wet, the insecticide will seep into the soil, go in through the roots, and it will treat the plant from the inside out. So once your plants fully have that insecticide in their system, any bug that chews on the leaf, any, you know, nasty thing that gets on it will die because of what's inside the plant. Now, you don't want to use this insecticide on any plant that you are planning on eating. You know, so any tomatoes, berries, anything veggie, fruit, don't do that. If you have animals at home that like to eat your plants, I suggest not using this because, again, it is systemic. So if your pet eats the leaves off a plant that is treated, it could get really sick. You know, you don't want to use this on any plant that will be consumed by anyone, whether it be on purpose or an accident, because it will kill the bugs that eat it. So you don't want to, you know, yeah, common sense. This Bonide actually lasts for, I believe, up to 8 weeks. Yeah, it says protects plants from damaging insects for up to 2 months. And what's really awesome about it is not only does it treat the plant from the inside out, but because it's in the topsoil and mixed in an inch down, gnats will not nest in them. Gnats are annoying as hell. Once you have gnats, they're very hard to get rid of, even with the tape, even with neem oil. It's very hard because they breed so quickly. Their life cycle, I believe, is like 24 or 48 hours, and basically they lay thousands of eggs in your soil and then keep hatching over and over again. So what this preventative does is being mixed in this soil is it makes it inhospitable and also a poisonous environment in your soil for them so they don't keep breeding. I have had gnats every single year that I've had plants, even during the winter, and at one point they were really, really bad, and it wasn't until I started using this stuff I haven't had a single gnat in my house, and it's awesome. I don't have to worry about letting my soil dry out, even though you should. I don't have to worry about anything like that, which is awesome. So I like to treat all of my plants after giving them a good wash down and rinse with the Bonide in their soil. And as you can see, this one I just treated. I don't know if you can see that gray dusting, and I like to put that on the top, and so the next time when I go to water my plant, that'll start seeping in, and then it will become vaccinated, so to speak. If you are a health nut when it comes to what you're putting in your plants, you know, again, this is not all natural, I wouldn't use it, but if you don't care and you're not consuming your plant, it works really well. Now, I will say, warning, for some plants, the Bonide can be a little bit jarring. So every single time I treat a new plant, I do expect to have a few burnt leaves or a few leaves that brown or yellow, and I just pinch them off. But after that, after my plant gets used to the insecticide, they calm down. I haven't had a single plant die from that yet. I've just had, again, just a few leaves get like a little bit wonky as they got used to the treatment. But if you have truly delicate plants, just be aware and be very, very careful. I have, as you guys know, Hoyas, I have Pothos, I have Philodendrons, I have Calatheas, I have Pileas, I have Fiddle Leaves, I have ZZ plants, I have spider plants, you know, I have all sorts of plants and I haven't had an issue yet. Just keep that in mind though. If you have a very, very delicate, expensive plant, just test it out. Be very, very cautious about how much you use. I spent a long time talking about that insecticide. I apologize. I'll leave a link for it underneath this video, but I just wanted to talk about that because that seems to be a sensitive subject in the plant world. So another thing I like to do, which is a little bit more on the all natural side, is I will also give my plants a good spray down with neem oil. Now this might be overkill. This is by the same company, Bonide. This might be overkill to do, but it's just, And I don't really honestly know if it actually works because I tried to use neem oil to get rid of spider mites and other things before, and it was not effective whatsoever. I don't know. People seem to think that it works though, so I just figure it's not gonna hurt. So I use this, and I'll spray this on actually all of my plants probably once a month. When I go to water them, I'll just do a light misting on their leaves. And basically neem oil is an all-natural way to also prevent bugs, and people say to get rid of them, but again, I've never had a successful bout with neem oil that has gotten rid of insects. If anything, when I tried to treat my Dieffenbachia like a year ago or 2 years ago, it made the insects like more angry, and it's almost like they multiplied faster. So yeah, I don't rely on this. This is just kind of like a, I don't know, a hopeful, like maybe I'm doing something good for my plants, and it gives the plants leaves a nice shine. So I'll just take it and I'll literally just, you know, mist the leaves again. And yeah, it doesn't hurt, doesn't hurt. This is a fungicide as well. I think that actually does work as a good fungicide, so it's a good thing to have on your plants to help them with their health. But this, I will leave a link for below as well. I don't know if I'm making any sense right now. Hopefully I am. I feel like all out of sorts. But now that you have your plant all, you know, vaccinated, cleaned up, as healthy as possible, you know, you're ready to bring it into your house, this is when you want to set your plant aside. And again, you guys are probably thinking like, oh my god, like I cleaned it, I gave it insecticidal, like what more, like why do I need to, you know, keep it aside? I like to keep my new plants, and I should probably follow this rule of thumb more than I actually do. I like to keep my new plants that I bring into my house away from my other plants, and not in a whole different room because I have plants in every single room in my house, but I at least like to keep them a couple feet away from any other plants that I have, just for a week or so I can make sure that, you know, there isn't any bugs that I didn't catch on it. Because if you have an infestation that you didn't catch and you bring it into your home and set it next to a really healthy plant, that infestation is gonna crawl on over to your other established plant, and then it's gonna crawl on over to your other ones, and then you're just gonna have a really big job on your hands of getting rid of them. It's just one more preventative measure to take with your new plant, just to save yourself a headache down the road. After a week of it being all lonesome by itself on a shelf somewhere away from your plants, then you can start introducing it to where you wanna put it. My suggestion, again, is to pay very closely to your light requirements of your plant. Low light plants can tolerate low light. Tolerate, which I have learned over the last year, means it will just not die. It will, however, become lackluster. It will become less bushy. It will probably, you know, if it's variegated or variated, it will probably revert back to a solid color. You know, it will not produce these big, huge leaves. It'll be more like little stingy little tiny leaves. Like, tolerance is different than thriving. So low light tolerant plants like a pothos or a philodendron will always do better with medium indirect light. They will thrive with the more light you give them. Indirect light, not direct, because they'll burn. So just keep that in mind. So when you bring home a low light plant, don't expect it to go gangbusters on you, you know, and almost expect it to decline a little bit. Again, it'll stay alive, but it won't be super duper happy. So once you're ready to introduce it to its spot, just again, go back to, you know, your instructions on how to take care of that breed of plant, and, you know, make sure to put it in a good spot where you think it will really, really do well. With that being said, I move my plants around all the time. As I mentioned earlier, I think a month to a month and a half is a good time period to know if a plant is happy somewhere, because you can bring a plant home and for, you know, 2 weeks it can be awesome, and then suddenly it will just look like shit, and that's because the plant finally got used to its environment and it didn't like where you put it. Pay close attention. When you see it start declining, figure out if it's light or water and adjust. I move my plants, like I said, around a lot. The only one that I don't is my fiddle leaf, because fiddle leaves are notorious for hating to be moved. When they're happy somewhere, just leave it, because if you move it, it'll get real pissed off and tell you that it's pissed off. But I move my pothos and my Hoyas and my Pileas around. Sometimes I'll move them closer to light if they look really sad, and then I'll move them back to where they are a little bit more shaded. You know, I move my plants around. It's kind of fun. If you have a addictive personality like me, plants are kind of fun because you can propagate them and make more of them as much as you want, and you can move them around. You can entertain yourself with, you know, what you have instead of needing to go out and get more. So just, you know, pay attention, figure it out. Once it's in its spot, the next thing you're going to want to do is if you're like me, you're gonna wanna make it look nice, right? I highly suggest not repotting it immediately. Plants take time to adjust. Anytime you change anything about their life, they need time to recoup. So if you give it a big shower, if you vaccinate it, if you spray neem oil on it, and then you also repot it, it's like, holy cow, this is too much. So you want your plant to get settled, so to speak. And so in my experience, this is just my experience, the longer I let my plant, as long as it's not like roots are coming out the bottom or roots aren't coming out top, but the longer I let it just be in its nursery pot, the happier it is before I repot it. So this guy right here, I will probably let stay in its nursery pot because the roots are not coming out the top or the bottom. Also, houseplants, most of them like to be a little bit root bound. So to make it look nice until I decide to repot it, which probably will not be until next spring because we're heading into fall right now. That's another thing. You don't want to do anything super drastic to any of your houseplants right before their dormant season, which for me is coming up. October, November, December, January, February, those months, I won't say that they stop growing, but they don't get enough sunlight to really thrive, grow a lot, and recoup. So again, you don't want to do a whole lot of change right before, you know, the season of sleepy time. Because I don't like this green pot, I'm just gonna find a nice cover pot for it. These are plastic, they have a nice drainage hole at the bottom. I think I got like a set of 5 of these off Amazon for a really cheap price. They're white, which I like because that means they're really versatile in whatever room I decide to put them in. And I will just set the whole thing in a cover pot. And so that way roots aren't traumatized, nothing's really changed for it except it just looks a little bit prettier. Again, whatever cover pot you put it in, you either want to make sure there's drainage hole in it or you want to make sure to take the nursery pot and the plant out when you water it, so that way you don't have it sitting in any water. But again, this is just a nice way of dressing it up a little bit without traumatizing the roots immediately. Now, if you want to repot your plant, if it's the middle of the summer, if you feel confident that it will be okay, by all means, go ahead. But for me and the way that my house works in our seasons and our sunlight, this has just been the best for me, is to leave it in the nursery pot for the next season if I buy anything right before fall. And again, you can repot your plants, you can do whatever you want with your plants because they're your plants. This is just how I do mine. So after that, you should be pretty good. If your plant is bone dry, which I highly doubt it will be bone dry because you just got it from the nursery, again, they usually water pretty regularly, if not daily, which is why nursery pots have so many holes at the bottom of them and on the sides, so that way they don't, you know, sit in a lot of moisture. But if you do have a bone dry plant, I would wait probably a day or two before watering it. Again, you don't want to over, you know, bog their system, and you don't want to necessarily fertilize it right away either. I fertilize my plants during the summer, I would say probably weekly. I like to use this fish one that I saw another YouTuber use. I'll leave a link underneath this video. It's organic. It's all organic and natural, unlike the insecticide that I put on it. I'm trying to at least do a little bit good by my plants, so natural fertilizers, you know, kind of offset the insecticides. But the fertilizer I like to just add into my gallon size watering pitcher. Why did that take so long to figure out? Watering, there's another name for this. Watering pitcher, plant pitcher, what the hell is it called? Watering can. I like to just put, you know, a capful or two in my gallon size watering can, and then I will just go ahead and water all my plants with it. And like I said, I like to do that probably every week to every other week, depending on the watering schedule throughout the summer. Now, I do not fertilize past September, so October, November, December, January, February, March, 6 months out of the year I do not fertilize. I just let them be. So you should be okay to not fertilize your plant for the first, you know, few weeks that it comes home. But again, just kind of watch your plant. You know, if your plant is declining, again, if your plant is super root bound, repot it, give it a little bit of nutrients, but other than that, it should be good to go. The biggest thing is just making sure you bring a healthy and clean plant into your house. A lot of people, I think, feel like they can't have plants because they kill them so much, but I honestly think the biggest thing is just you're bringing home unhealthy plants some of the times, because for me, I was bringing home plants and some of them would thrive. The difficult ones even. Like, people would be like, oh my god, I can't keep that alive, but for some reason I could. And then I bring home a really easy one that everyone's like, this is the dummy-proof plant, and I'd kill it. And I realized the more that I kept buying plants, that all plants are different, you know, whether the settings that they were in, just in general, like they are just all different. Even if they're the same variety, they can be all different. I've had numerous times where one pothos is doing really well or pothos is doing really well and another one of the same variety just dies. Like it's, you know, yeah. So whenever you buy a plant, just always go in with the mindset of, I might kill this thing, and if I do, it's not the end of the world. So I hope this was helpful. I think I went over everything. If you have any questions, leave them below. I will definitely leave links to all the different things that I use to keep my plants pest free. I will say again though, the biggest thing that worked for me, and you guys, I bought neem oil. I did the Dawn dishwasher whatever thing to try to get rid of gnats. I changed out soil numerous times to get rid of gnats. I let plants dry out, which some of them just like burnt up to hell because I let them dry out too much trying to get rid of the gnats. I've bought even that like fly sticky tape, which was super unattractive to hang over certain plants. Like I've done so many different things and spent so much money on different preventatives, and the only thing that's worked has been this bonide. The only thing. So this has been the only effective way for me to get rid of gnats, even though it's an insecticide. It's the only thing. But I will leave links to that, the neem oil, and the fertilizer underneath this video. Oh, and those cover pots if you're interested. Yeah, that's pretty much the 101 for me on how I introduce new plant babies to my home and kind of the first few months of having a new plant. And again, I just keep an eye on everything. I just, you know, make sure nothing's declining. I like to check every single time I water a plant. I'll like touch its leaves. I'll wipe down its leaves regularly with like a wet washcloth to make sure there's no bugs or dust on them. Oh, another thing you want if you are gonna repot your plant quickly or eventually is a good soil. This is another thing when it comes to insect and gnat, you know, prevention. Make sure you're using a clean, dry soil. I have made the mistake of putting a bag of open dirt and leaving it open in the garage and it getting infested with bugs and then using it on a houseplant and suddenly having bugs in the house. I've also made the mistake of closing it up and putting a snack chip on it and then leaving it outside and then it getting wet, and then what grew in it? Gnats. And using that in a new pot and having to get rid of gnats then. Like I've made all of those mistakes. If you're going to repot a new plant, make sure to get a good soil, especially one that is supposed to be used for your plant. So like if you have a Hoya, use more of a coarse blend. If you have a, you know, something that needs to stay a little bit more moist like a Stramanthe or a Calathea, use more of a moisture locking one. But yeah, just always make sure, clean, dry soil every single time. Got it? That'll help you a lot. But anyways, I'm gonna let you guys go. Sorry this video was a little bit all over the place. Hopefully it wasn't too confusing. If you like videos like this, if you like plant-based videos, let me know. Give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to see more, and I will see you guys all in my next video. Bye.